6 years to the month since UFC's parent company Zuffa LLC sold the company to WME-IMG. Dana White has been speaking about what that period of time meant for him in particular. The sale netted Zuffa around $4 billion, and as such, gave White the sort of money that people rarely ever see. Today, we are discussing Dana's admission that the money the sale brought in seriously messed him up for a short time. Stay tuned. So let's have a look at his career to date first. Having been born in Connecticut in 1969, White got into combat sports from an early age when he began boxing at 17. He attempted college on 2 separate occasions, but he failed to graduate both times. It was at this point in his life that he began working as a boxercise coach. White was then forced out of Massachusetts, where he was living at the time, thanks to a small loan from local prominent gangster Whitey Bulger turning sour. He moved out to Las Vegas, the spiritual how of combat sports, to pursue his career, and looking back on that time in his life, he said that it was actually a man named Kevin Weeks who forced him out of the state after he called one day claiming he had to pay the debt back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Of course, the warning sounded ominous enough for White to pick up the phone and call Delta and book a flight to Vegas, where he's been ever since. It was here in Nevada that Dana joined up with the Fertitta brothers once again, after previously having gone to high school with them. Carrying on with his boxer-size business, White also met UFC legends Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, quickly becoming their manager and also fronting up the UFC as president after convincing Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta to purchase it for $2 million back in 2001. Were you a UFC fan back in the day? Next up, we're talking White's recent comments. Stay tuned. The UFC president recently appeared on the Pivot podcast, where as well as claiming that boxers are overpaid, he also gave the details about the period in which the UFC was purchased by WME-IMG and what exactly that meant for him. Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, as well as White himself, had built the UFC into what it is today, over the 15 years up until 2016. But the brothers both decided to step down, whilst White was offered the chance to remain in his position, which he took them up on, but not before a lot of soul-searching. He explained that it was actually a bad time for him and that he really didn't want to do it at first, but after the Fertittas sat him down and told him that all of the offers they had for the company were contingent on White staying in his role, he had a change of heart. White said that before he agreed to do it, however, he went through a period of isolation and revealed that he was kind of in a weird place, because he'd done this thing with them and they're his best friends. They'd done it together. Of course, it's nice to see how loyal he was to the Fertittas, and White went on to explain that he took off for a little while and he got a little effed up, which is understandable after everything that they've been through over the past 15 years. So what else did he have to say? Let's see. Well, of course, he didn't stay in the hotel room too long, and he finally found his senses. He went on to describe his new partner, Ari Emanuel, and how he's been a particular joy to work with. Reflecting on that couple of days, he said, "I snapped out of it. I got my thoughts together. The sale happened. What I'm saying is, if I have to stay, don't put me with some effed up group of people." And thankfully for Dana, it turned out that Emanuel had been incredible to work with. He even said it couldn't have worked out any better, and he's loving his role. White now has the sort of money that most people could never see, and this dude could easily retire, but claims that he still has that fire in his belly and he needs to carry on doing the job effectively. He said, "I still love it. I'm still having a blast. I got over my little phase. The money hits the bank, and it's a weird thing." White said, "I had money. I already had money. I had money for effing 15 years before that. But then, you get that kind of money? I built a bigger house." Language, please. Dana, there are children present. He even finished by saying the whole experience turned out to be a positive one, and that when he finally does retire, they're gonna have to drag him out of there. What do you guys make of Dana's comments? Next up, a UFC newcomer has a message for Dana. Natan Levy, who recently joined the UFC after appearing on Dana White's Contender Series, has a lightweight fight in mind, but surprisingly, not for himself. The Israeli fighter has suggested that the fight everyone wants to see is Charles Oliveira against none other than many people's lightweight goat, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he's urged White to do all he can to make that happen. The Russian retired after his fight with Justin Gaethje back in 2020, following the death of his father, but that didn't stop White trying to persuade him to change his mind. Levy has since resisted the idea of Khabib returning by saying that he would do almost anything to get him to come back to fight Oliveira. He said, "If I was a matchmaker, I'd make Khabib come back from retirement to fight Charles." I mean, the idea of, making Khabib do anything is near impossible, but I think I understand what he means. Oliveira was, of course, forced to vacate his title after missing weight against Gaethje last time out, something which Michael Chandler criticized the Brazilian for on Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour last week. But many people, Khabib included, have suggested that his teammate Islam Makhachev should be next up to challenge this Brazilian. And Khabib even suggested that he doesn't see that fight going the distance, predicting that Islam finishes the Brazilian inside of 3 rounds. Who do you guys think should get the next shot at Oliveira? Rivera. More Dana news now, and a link to former President Donald Trump. White hit headlines last year when he invited then-President Donald Trump to the Poirier vs. McGregor 3 event. He even revealed that when the much-derided former president was running for president, he endorsed him due to their long-standing business relationship. The pair first came across to each other when the Trump Taj Mahal hosted UFC 31 and 32, and have been involved together in a business ever since. White said, "This brand was so bad. Venues didn't even want us. Arenas didn't want us. We had a hard time finding venues. Trump literally called us. He said, 'Come to my place. Do the event here. We'll have you at the Trump Taj Mahal.' We get there. The greatest thing ever is set up for us. He showed up right at the first fight, and he was there to the last fight. Both times we went there." In the UFC's early years, the promotion suffered much criticism and was even described by Arizona Senator John McCain as human cockfighting. Of course, what McCain failed to recognize was that cockfighting isn't optional, and nobody's forcing these guys into the octagon. It was around this time that MMA was banned in 36 states, which obviously meant that the UFC struggled in its younger years. But White went on to credit Trump with being there for the organization in its hour of need, describing him as a solid guy, even saying that Trump told him he would be honored if he would speak at the National Republican Convention, which he did in 2016 and 20. And finally, Dana has responded to Anderson Silva's recent criticisms. Many people's GOAT, Anderson Silva, who reigned as king of the middleweight division for almost 7 years, recently criticized the UFC for treating their fighters poorly, and the president has since responded. When hearing of Silva's claims that they try to use you and kick you out, and when you're out, they try to destroy your career so you don't fight anywhere else, White was quick to defend himself in the promotion. The Connecticut native went on to question what Silva was talking about, saying, "When have you ever heard of me talking negatively, except for the fight in Abu Dhabi, about Anderson Silva? Never. I have never talked bad about Anderson Silva." He also reminded fans that the company let the guy fight through his contract, even after losing, quote-unquote, 7 of his last 8 or 8 of his last 9 fights. He said that they've always treated Silva with respect and seems to have no idea whatsoever where the attack even came from. Silva last appeared in the UFC in October of 2020, losing via technical knockout to Uriah Hall, with some people suggesting the legendary Brazilian had carried on for too long. What do you guys think? As always, thanks for dropping by today, and remember to stop by again next time for some more fun and games. Also, why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video with any MMA fans you might happen to know? Later, guys.